When central banks announce that inflation is under control at around 2%, does that news truly resonate with your everyday experience? For many, the official numbers and the reality of rising costs seem to exist in two different universes. This disconnect can be frustrating, leaving you wondering if the economic data truly reflects your financial reality. 2% inflation is frequently presented as the economic ideal. It's described as healthy, stable, and a sign of a well-functioning economy. This target is a cornerstone of monetary policy in many developed nations, including the United States and the Eurozone. However, for countless individuals, hearing this number doesn't bring a sense of relief or stability. Instead, it often sparks confusion, skepticism, and even a feeling of being financially squeezed. Your grocery bills, rent, and daily expenses continue to climb, making this stable 2% figure feel profoundly out of touch with your personal budget. Today, we're going to embark on an educational journey to demystify what 2% inflation genuinely signifies. We'll explore why this seemingly small number is so crucial to economists and central bankers, and more importantly, why its practical implications for your life can feel vastly different from its technical definition. By understanding the nuances, you'll gain a clearer perspective on the economic forces shaping your financial world. By the end of this comprehensive explanation, you will grasp the fundamental principles behind the 2% inflation target. You'll understand what this number truly represents in economic terms, what it explicitly does not represent, and the underlying reasons why your personal financial experience can feel so disconnected from official economic data. This clarity is essential for making informed financial decisions and navigating the complexities of the modern economy. Let's begin by establishing the core concept. 2% inflation means that, on average, the general price level of goods and services across an economy is expected to increase by approximately 2% each year. This is a deliberate policy choice by central banks, not a natural phenomenon. Their primary mandate often includes maintaining price stability, and they've determined that a small, positive rate of inflation is actually more beneficial than zero inflation or deflation. It's crucial to understand that this target does not imply that prices will remain static, nor does it suggest that prices will ever decrease. Instead, it signifies a slow, continuous, and predictable upward creep in prices over time. This subtle distinction is often overlooked, leading to significant misunderstandings about the nature of inflation. The choice of a 2% inflation target isn't arbitrary. It's rooted in several key economic principles. Firstly, a small positive inflation rate provides a buffer against deflation. Deflation, a sustained decrease in prices, sounds appealing on the surface, but it can be economically devastating. When prices fall, consumers tend to delay purchases, anticipating even lower prices in the future. This reduces demand, stifles economic growth, and can lead to widespread job losses. Secondly, a modest inflation rate allows for greater flexibility in labor markets. If wages remain sticky, meaning they don't easily go down, a little inflation can help adjust real wages without requiring nominal wage cuts, which are often met with strong resistance from workers. This greases the wheels of the economy, allowing for smoother adjustments to economic shocks. Finally, a predictable 2% inflation rate helps to anchor inflation expectations. When businesses and consumers expect prices to rise steadily, they can plan accordingly. This stability reduces uncertainty, encourages investment, and supports long-term economic planning. Central banks use various tools, primarily adjusting interest rates, to guide inflation towards this target. To measure this 2% target, economists rely on various indices, with the Consumer Price Index, CPI, being one of the most widely cited. The CPI tracks the average change over time in the prices paid by urban consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services. This basket includes a wide array of items, from food and housing to transportation, medical care, and recreation. However, the CPI is an average, and averages can sometimes mask significant variations. Your personal inflation rate might differ from the official CPI because your spending habits might not perfectly align with the average consumer's basket. For instance, if you spend a larger proportion of your income on categories experiencing higher than average price increases, your personal inflation experience will feel more acute. This is a critical point for understanding the gap between official statistics and individual realities. Let's illustrate the practical impact of 2% inflation with a tangible example. Imagine an item you regularly purchase, perhaps a staple like a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk, costs $100 today. With a consistent 2% inflation rate, that same item will not remain at $100 indefinitely. Next year, its price will be approximately $102. The year after that, it will be slightly more, around $104.04, due to the compounding effect. This seemingly small, annual increase continues year after year, quietly but relentlessly eroding the purchasing power of your money. Over a decade, that original $100 item would cost roughly $122. Over 30 years, it would be over $181. This compounding effect is precisely why 2% inflation, which sounds benign on paper, can feel much more significant and impactful in your everyday life. It's a slow, steady drain on your financial resources, often unnoticed in the short term but profoundly felt over the long haul. This phenomenon is particularly relevant for long-term savings, retirement planning, and fixed incomes, where the erosion of purchasing power can be substantial. This is where the psychological theme of technically correct, practically misleading truly comes into play. When individuals hear reports of low inflation or inflation returning to target, they often instinctively expect a return to price stability or at least a halt in price increases. The expectation is that their money will go further or at least maintain its value. However, what is actually being communicated is a promise of slow change, not no change. The prices that have already risen do not magically revert to their previous levels. The 2% target simply means the rate at which prices are increasing has slowed down, not that the increases themselves have stopped or reversed. This subtle but crucial distinction is a major source of public frustration and a feeling of being misled. Furthermore, if wages, savings, or fixed incomes do not grow at a pace that at least matches or ideally exceeds this 2% inflation rate, then even slow inflation can lead to a tangible decrease in living standards. Your purchasing power diminishes, making it harder to afford the same basket of goods and services year after year. This reaction is not only understandable, but also entirely reasonable from a household budget perspective. It highlights the critical importance of real wage growth in maintaining economic well-being. From a purely technical, macroeconomic standpoint, a 2% inflation rate is considered beneficial. It provides the necessary flexibility for the overall economy to adjust, encourages investment, and helps prevent the pitfalls of deflation. Central bankers view it as a sign of a healthy, growing economy. However, from the perspective of an individual household, the reality is starkly different. 2% inflation still means that prices for essential goods and services, like food, housing, utilities, and healthcare, continue to rise every single year. These are non-discretionary expenses that consume a significant portion of most household budgets. When these costs increase, even modestly, it directly impacts disposable income and financial security. Therefore, when inflation returns to 2%, it does not magically undo the cumulative price increases that have occurred over previous months or years. It merely signifies that the pace of future price increases is expected to be slower than during periods of high inflation. This persistent gap between the technical success celebrated by economists and the practical, lived experience of consumers is a significant source of public frustration and skepticism towards economic reporting. It underscores the challenge of communicating complex economic realities in a way that resonates with everyday financial struggles. Once you internalize this fundamental distinction, the 2% inflation target begins to sound very different. It's not a promise that your groceries will suddenly become cheaper or that your rent will stabilize. Instead, it's an economic signal indicating that the rate of price increases has moderated to a level deemed sustainable and healthy for the broader economy. Understanding this doesn't magically make rising costs disappear from your budget. However, it does provide crucial clarity, helping to explain why good inflation news from official sources often doesn't feel good when you're balancing your household budget. This clarity is invaluable especially when navigating financial decisions and interpreting economic headlines. It empowers you to look beyond the surface numbers and grasp the deeper implications for your personal finances. This knowledge allows you to approach economic news with a more informed perspective. You can differentiate between the technical goals of monetary policy and the practical realities of your purchasing power. It helps you understand that while central banks aim for overall economic stability, individual financial stability often requires proactive planning and an awareness of how inflation subtly erodes wealth over time. On this channel, our mission is not to generate fear or frustration, but to foster financial literacy and empower you with a deeper understanding of economic concepts. We aim to explain how these complex economic ideas manifest in your everyday life, presenting them clearly, calmly, and without jargon where possible. Our goal is to bridge the gap between academic economics and practical financial well-being. In upcoming videos, we will continue to break down intricate economic concepts, such as the impact of interest rates, the role of government spending, and the dynamics of global trade, using real-world examples that resonate with your experiences. We believe that an informed public is better equipped to make sound financial decisions and advocate for policies that truly serve their interests. If there's a specific aspect of inflation, monetary policy, or any other economic phenomenon that you'd like us to explain more clearly, please don't hesitate to share your questions and suggestions in the comments section below. Your input helps us tailor our content to your needs and interests. Thank you for investing your time in enhancing your economic understanding today. We hope this explanation has provided valuable insights, and we look forward to continuing this educational journey with you.